Hey everyone, welcome to the Theater Podcast, intimate personal conversations with the industry's biggest names. I'm your host, Alan Seals, and this is another episode I'm bringing back to you from the vault, as I'm calling it. This is with Tony winner, Bonnie Milligan, who just won a few weeks ago for her role as Aunt Deb in Kimberly Akimbo, and this is originally episode 5. We recorded on November 9th. It was launched on November 19th, 2018. This is such an oldie, and I absolutely love it. Bonnie has continued to grow, of course. We were originally recording for Head Over Heels, so the majority of the conversation is about that. Enjoy this episode. Bonnie is a gem. She is Broadway's national treasure. So now everybody please, again, enjoy this episode with Bonnie Milligan.
Here you go. 1, 2, 3.
Welcome to the Theater Podcast, intimate personal conversations with theater's biggest talents. I'm your host, Alan Seals. Today we have with us Bonnie Milligan, otherwise known across the internet as Belting Bonnie.
Hello.
Yes. Your credits include the first national tour of Kinky Boots. You were the original Pat in that production. You've been off Broadway all over the place. God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater, Gigantic, Jasper in the Deadland. On television, you even have recurring role of Caitlin on TBS's Search Party, and then Happy on the Sci-Fi Network. And now you are, after originating the role at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, you've made your Broadway debut as the amazing Pamela in Head Over Heels.
Yes.
Thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me.
I'll start how I start normally with everyone here. Tell me about your childhood. Tell me about how you grew up. Where did you come from?
I grew up in central Illinois.
Illinois.
Illinois, exactly. Decatur, Illinois, to be exact.
I've been to Decatur.
You have?
I performed. Sorry to interrupt. I performed
No.
at Bear Creek. Bear Creek? Is it Bear Creek Dinner Theater?
Oh,
It was in.
wow, I don't know.
It was in Bryant, Indiana.
Indiana.
It's right near Decatur. It was near Decatur.
All right, fair.
I don't know. I need to fact check
We can
myself.
Google
It's
it.
been a long time. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so I grew up just kind of in the farmland, of America, the Great Plains. And I always was singing. My dad was a preacher, and I grew up in the church kind of always singing as soon as I could talk. And when I was 10 years old, I got the lead in a school play, and then I decided, I'm going to be an actress.
What was the play?
It was, I can't remember the title of it, but I was an elf that saved Christmas. Like something held up Santa. And it was one of those, it was a really small school. So there would be like 25 to 30 kids in a grade.
Mm-hmm.
So all of the grade school, like K through 4, would sit in bleachers on the side in the school gym. And the 5th graders were on stage being the actors. But all of the songs were sung by like the rest of the school. It was really, really top-notch art.
You got the acting bug back then.
And I did. I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And I have all these old like journals from when I was a kid that are so dramatic, that are like, I'm trapped in central Illinois, and, my life is so pathetically dry, and I want to be an actress, and just like so dramatic. And
You need to write your
over
first
the top.
cabaret show based on those journal entries.
Well, I do have a show coming up at Birdland, actually, November 26th. So
Oh, yeah?
I'll be doing a show. Yeah.
Well, depending on when this airs, it might have just happened. Actually, well, let's try to get this out before that.
All right, great.
We'll get this out before. So November 26th, everyone
go.
go see Bonnie
Come.
at the Birdland Jazz Club. It's on 45th, right?
44th.
44th, yeah. And then, so that was Did you sing as the elf? When did you know you could start to sing?
Well, I think I always sang. So it was one of those that my parents met when my dad was the new lead singer of the Southern Gospel group. My mom was the pianist for. So they were always singing. And we would do like specials in church, and I loved it right away. I have an older brother, and he has a great voice, but he would always be like, meh, over it. And I'd be like, great, give me his verses. So it was something that I kind of always did and always loved doing, was singing.
And then The roles that you've taken, from what I've seen, they always had to have, or they've had some sort of comedic element to them.
Yeah.
Where did you get that part of your personality from?
I don't know. You know, my dad's a funny guy. He was always he always was joking and, you know, he's an entertainer. And so I think that's where I kind of first learned comedy and making people laugh and then, you know, people liking you when I kind of got, like, I was around 10 when I don't know if it's like baby weight that all of a sudden hits at 10, but I got a little bit chubbier and I didn't want to be made fun of. So I thought I'll be the funny kid and then people will like me and I'll be popular that way. And so I kind of did self-deprecating humor at like 10 years old. But I did, and then I became popular because I was fun to be around. So it started then, for sure, when I was like a kid. And then, you know, the people that I look up to are the strong character actress comedians, you know, like Carol Burnett, Madeline Kahn. I love, you know, just strong, funny, hilarious women in musical theater world, you know, like Faith Prince, Beth Level, Deb Monk, all the good ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
I enjoy. I actually saw Beth in the prom very recently.
I gotta see that.
Blew me away.
She's hilarious.
You need to go see that. Maybe someone can help you out with that.
There you go.
But I want to touch back on, you said you're doing self-deprecating humor.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I want to touch on this later on in the podcast here as well about giving representation to plus-size women.
Yeah.
But your view of yourself, did that change on your own, or did it change as a response to how people were they treating you any differently?
I don't think so. I mean, again, I came from a really small town, you know, so it wasn't a lot of people. The town didn't have much money. We certainly didn't have much money. I grew up in like a double wide trailer. Mm-hmm. And so I always knew that there were things that, you know, I hated the trailer. I hated that, but it was something that I was always provided for. Nobody there was one time I had a friend kind of jab at me for it. Like, they wanted to come to my place and like, well, you're the only one that has a license plate on your house. And always being kind of aware of it. But so there were certain things like that. And my parents both struggled with their weight. So I remember thinking that was sort of my lot in life. Mm-hmm. And I even look back at pictures of myself and I wasn't even all that big, especially through the years when I hit high school. And I think, you're so beautiful. And I did not see it because I wore clothes that had 2 numbers, not 1. And everybody else had 1 number. So it was that always making sure that I was in charge of my story. And if it was going to be funny, then I was going to make it funny, and you're not laughing at me, you're laughing with me, mm-hmm. kind of a thing. And I remember, you know, even as I got older, different friends would be like, Bonnie, you're not fat. Like, what are you talking? I'm like, whatever, you know. So that was there from the beginning, and watching how my dad did that about himself and how he spoke and made jokes about being the big guy, and then everybody thinking he was so hilarious and so fun. So that's where I kind of saw it early. And then
as a preacher, though, did he incorporate that into his into what he was saying?
Yeah, I think it would be like, you know, he always had jokes. He's a really funny guy, so his messages, that's where a lot of people actually liked. He kind of traveled around and he would guest do sermons and stuff, and people always liked having him because he was really funny and relatable, and a really kind of down-to-earth guy that loved everybody he ever met, and, you know, was just a nice guy. So I kind of took that example of also being kind about everybody around me and embracing everybody around me, and trying to make everyone feel comfortable. Yeah, I don't know.
So you were 10-year-old elf. And
Georgianne, yeah.
Yes, Georgianne. And you said, I want to be on Broadway.
Yeah.
And did everybody say, all right, let's help you? Or were they saying, there's no way you're going to get there?
Well, like, it started off, so then once I decided this is what I'm going to do, I started thinking about what can I do locally, you know? I don't know where all of this came from, but I would remember looking in the paper and being like, Mom, can we go to this audition? And somebody I don't remember how I got involved with this summer program that Decatur did called the Best of Summer Stock, which BOSS, Boss. And they're Milligan University is in town, and it's kind of like a show choir they call the Park Singers. And they ran this program where it was just essentially musical theater camp for kids, but kind of show choir camp in a different way. And so I started doing that. And, my grandma paid for me to go, and she would take me every day. And it was really great. And that's how I kind of also got involved in, like, the local children's theater there. And then, they got me into musical theater camp for when I got a little bit older. And then as soon as I could drive, I was doing, like, community theater productions as well as my school productions. So I was, like, always doing a show. And I think, my mom especially was always just somebody that was like, just said yes and was like, okay, and never said that's not going to happen for you. Was just kind of let me have, like, the big dreams and let me do all the things along the way, which was really great. And, especially coming from a really small town, everybody's like, well, you're really talented, and kind of, I think, had hopes for it, but nobody said that's not going to happen for you. Wasn't really until later in college when it got a little bit like some voices of it's going to be hard for you because of your weight and you might not make it. But it took a while for me to kind of hear that because people were pretty encouraging along the way as I was growing up.
You said in college people started, I guess, trying to reality check you, for lack of a better phrase. Did that dissuade you at all, or were you like, screw you guys, I'm going to do this anyway?
There was one incident that happened. It was with somebody that just meant a lot to me, and it was like over drinks that had said, it's not going to happen for you. And this person is who I really, really looked up to. And so I was devastated. And the next day they were very like, I'm so sorry. It was the vodka, and I don't think that. But it was like, what? Why would you say that? And, I forgave her, and I thought, okay, yeah. But it wasn't honestly until years later I really realized what those words had planted in me, this like idea of that was a premonition, like a truth, rather than like an opinion of somebody that you're like, okay, whatever, I'm different and it's going to be different for me. That someone that I trusted with everything that said it with, I love you and this is why I'm telling you this, of fear. And of course there was all the insecurities that you have inside yourself anyway that fed into that. I think kind of snowballed. That first, when I moved to New York, I didn't really go for things. Like, I think maybe I would have, and who knows, like maybe I always would have been a little scared and not, gone for it as much because I didn't have a leg up. Like a lot of these college programs too, you have a showcase in New York, and that means agents and people come and see you, and we didn't have one of those because mine was a liberal arts degree from Ohio State that focused in acting, not musical theater. And I loved my program. I begrudgingly went in the first place because they gave me all my money. And again, I didn't have any money growing up. So it was one of those things that wasn't, honestly, it was like 4 or 5 years after I'd moved to the city that I realized, oh my gosh, like I haven't been doing this. And I didn't realize what those words really did mean to me, that that was kind of a devastating thing to realize what I had allowed to permeate my like self-worth and confidence. So I kind of got into therapy to start thinking, like, how can I find that girl again that loved herself and believed in herself? Or did that part of me die? Or can I find it again, or just find a way to move on from it? And I can't recommend therapy enough because
no, me neither.
It's just,
it's so helpful.
It is. Yeah. Life's hard. So,
Especially New York life.
Oh, my Lord. Yeah.
So you said you were here for 4 or 5 years?
Yeah.
Before? And so when did you move to New York, though?
2008.
2008. Okay. So that was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And then when did the first workshop for Head Over Heels kind of fall your way?
That came 4 years ago. So that came in 2014. We did the very first reading of Head Over Heels.
It was here in the city?
It was, yeah.
And then, okay, so you did the reading here, and then it got success at an Oregon festival?
Yeah, so then they did the world premiere a year later in 2015 at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. And so I had, after the reading, I booked the first national tour of Kinky Boots. So I left town and did the Kinky Boots national tour when I heard it's going to happen at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. And you're like, okay. So I put myself on tape because it's a rep company, which you don't just do one show. You do at least 2, if not 3. Mm-hmm. So I had to audition, and then I got the part. So I left the Kinky Boots tour at the very end of March, and I went out to Oregon, and I was out there for 6.5 months, where we developed and worked on it and performed it for like 4.5 months in rep.
And I guess I'm putting this into perspective for people who may not know about the show or might not have seen it. A show that is on Broadway that has so much unique representation that we haven't seen before, premiering at a Shakespearean festival, because it's a jukebox musical of go-go's music. Mm-hmm. Why did it work for Shakespeare, I guess, is what...
Well, our book is, a lot of it's in iambic pentameter. It's mostly free verse or iambic pentameter, so it sounds a little bit more what you would think of Shakespearean. Mm-hmm. And there's many Shakespearean tropes. It feels like one of his comedies, Midsummer, where you have people in the forest and meeting lovers and mistaken identity and kind of magic and... all that.
It's Elizabethan costumes.
Yeah. So it's kind of an Elizabethan sex romp mashup with a book. It's based on Sir Philip Sidney's Arcadia, which was in the 1580s. So you have a book from the 1580s with the music of the 1980s, and somehow it works.
Well, speaking of sex romp, I want to sidetrack real quick and talk about Cuff Me.
Yes.
The 50 Shades of Grey musical parody off Broadway in 2013. Yeah. I don't know if I had I'd call it the pleasure of seeing it. Did you enjoy that? What was that?
It was my off-Broadway debut. It was the first thing that I had done off-Broadway, and it was so fun and ridiculous. There were 4 of us actors, and 2 people that played Anna and Christian, and then the other 2 of us that were kind of the clowns that we did. We were 2 New Jersey housewives, like we're reading about the book in a nail salon. It was an old woman trying to buy like supplies, and I was her inner monologue and her roommate, and it was one of those crazy like 80-minute shows where you just go, and they parodied pop songs. And I would have like 4 costumes on at one point because I was like in a onesie with things underneath and things underneath to make a quick change. And it was just one of those shows where it was so fast and furious, and they allowed a lot of kind of improv, and I love that improv nature. I'm just really having fun, and I did it with really funny people. So we would have a lot of like the middle-aged Jersey ladies coming in. That was really our crowd. And we did it at the Actors Temple, which is funny because it's an active temple, doing 50 Shades of Grey. Cuff Me.
Oh, like a religious temple.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That also doubles as like a theater.
Would you consider that your weirdest job?
I mean, that was a pretty crazy job. Yeah, I think that was... Yeah, and we toured it a couple times. We went to Texas. We went to Florida.
Texas?
We went to Boston. Yeah. For like a week. You would just go and do like a week of shows. And it was really funny and really crazy. We were at like the Boston Opera House doing Cuff Me. I kid you not.
I just imagine these pent-up housewives that are just coming in and being like, don't tell my husband that I'm here, but I'm really enjoying this.
A lot of bachelorette parties. It was a good time.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's incredible. So getting back on track.
Yeah.
October 21st, 2018, Head Over Heels was the 100th post-opening performance.
Yeah.
And I found a quote online of something else you said once. You said, "Many scoffed that we wouldn't even make it to here, proud to be taking down the patriarchy, rejecting the binary, exploring the gender spectrum, representing so many, and celebrating queerness on Broadway." What does all of this, all of this behind the show, it's so unique, it's so representative of things we don't see. What does this all mean to you? Like you, the person?
I think it feels like an important responsibility to show people themselves that have never seen themselves, that are, especially in this world right now with this administration, there are so many attacks, especially on the LGBTQIA community. And it's devastating and it's so hard. And I meet so many people at the stage door that are, especially young queer kids and non-binary kids, that are just like sobbing, saying, I never thought I would hear they pronouns like in a Broadway show. And what we're doing is celebrating queerness and celebrating finding your true authentic self and identity and embracing it and embracing acceptance for other people. And I think it's a message we need right now in this world that day by day feels scarier and harder to think, how are people letting this happen? And so to feel like we're on stage showing the cis white hetero man be taught a lesson by a powerful trans person of color saying, you need to stop doing what you're doing because you're going down a bad path of like chaos and destruction. And because we're set in Elizabethan kind of a time period, it feels like a fairy tale, and it feels far enough away that you can embrace this magic and this ideal situation of this man actually learning his lesson and feeling like he needs to change. And having, even in that, me, the big girl on stage, being the beautiful princess, and everyone on stage saying you are, there's this... we're empowering this like body positivity, this rejecting the binary, saying one of the other characters, he kind of finds gender fluidity in the show and embraces that. And there are things that it's just like people want to get hung up on these things, especially like the president. And it's insane to me. And I love that we get to celebrate the beautiful spectrum of souls that inhabit this earth. And I think it's important, and I think it's somehow dangerous for us to go that far to embrace all these people, and it's too much. And that's what I was talking about, people thinking, oh, they'll never get this far because they're being so inclusive, and it's frustrating. And so it delights me to be able to do this 8 times a week, and it feels like a responsibility to celebrate people that aren't celebrated, and that in fact fear their livelihoods are at stake and at risk, and to say, we love you here and we celebrate you. Beyond allowing you to be here, you're a part of this world, and it's, loved and also normalized in a way too. It's not, just to have it there. We love and appreciate the people that inhabit our world. And
I was just thinking about your father. You said he was very religious, obviously.
Yeah.
A preacher. Did you hear? I guess I grew up in a small town where it was the middle of Bible Belt, North Carolina. Yeah. There's a Southern Baptist church on every corner, and because I didn't go to church with somebody's daughter, I wasn't allowed to date them, and like everybody different was just wrong. Did you, so this is my own past coming back to I guess color my question, but does your father support any of these views? Do you guys agree? Like, is he open-minded when
he is open-minded? What's the thing that is amazing that I do feel fortunate about, like with my parents and especially my mom, is I saw if you look at Christianity and like Jesus and stuff, to me, it was very like liberal, and that's what like a lot of problems he had. And I'm not very religious myself. I do believe in God and all of that, but I look at my mom who acts like actually a Christian, and she loves everyone. And, we went to go vote Hillary together. And she actually acts with that kind, open heart. And that's one thing that growing up, I never saw my dad rejecting anyone or putting his nose up to anyone or saying they're not right for this and that. I saw a lot of people in the church do that.
Yeah.
And that's what I have a problem with religion and the hypocrisy of so much, especially right now that's happening. And I don't know. I can't say what my dad votes. You know what I mean? But I know how I've watched him act, and I hope that, it's hard because I think politics right now, it's put a good amount of distance between me and a fair amount of family that I love dearly, that I know what your heart is. And I don't know. He never told me who he voted for, which makes me think,
Yeah.
But so I can only say that I don't know. It's how you act, and so much of that hypocrisy is what I have a problem with. But I know that I learned compassion and love, and he embraced everyone he ever met. Which is how I've tried to live. And again, like I said, if you're looking for real Christian ways, that's what you're supposed to be doing, is love thy neighbor.
Right.
And,
People have told me, when I've told them that kind of feeling of mine before, they've said, like, you're more Buddhist than anything. Because Buddhism is more of just, loving yourself, loving everyone around you, and just, being nice in general. And we need a lot more of that, obviously, right now. But, speaking of the current administration, the show Head Over Heels, you said it's evolved over the last 4 years, so it was conceived years before our current administration ever, got to, the president, before the president we had, before he even announced he was going to run for president. But the message obviously was being cooked already. Yeah. And then our, Trump is just bringing all this to the forefront of our minds to talk about. But how have you seen the show evolve over the last 4 years? And did it change at all that you know of in response to our current administration?
For sure. For sure. The Oracle was a much more kind of separate character. There was no name Pythio, which is what we have now. There was the Oracle was not non-binary, was not secretly connected to other characters. I don't want to ruin the plot. That wasn't there. And there was the stuff that was there was Musidorus does have a speech at the end about embracing both female and male in him. That was always there. And there used to be a section of, in a meeting I have with my sister and everybody, I kind of called to arms about fighting for our right to marry. Turns out I'm a lesbian. So
spoiler alert.
Spoiler. And so that was all part of it. And I remember being in Oregon the day that the same-sex marriage, what was it? Not the amendment, the 2015. It got passed, like it was all across the nation, like same-sex marriage. And I remember saying to fight for our right to marry, and we had to hold for the applause because it was just like this beautiful, it had happened while here I was talking about it.
May 19th, 2014, it was officially recognized in Oregon, yeah.
And so I remember being like, yes. And there were things that, then a couple years down the line, then Michael Mayer became our director and brought a new team in. So we were kind of retooling things a couple of years ago. And I remember that was one of the first things he was like, I want to make sure we're current. I want to, the idea of like fighting for marriage feels a little dated. And he started the idea of relooking at Pythio, and now we have a new adapter, James Magruder, and so the two of them really wanted to change that and bring up another kind of thing in the forefront. And so that started in, I guess it would have been October-ish of 2016. We did another reading, and things started to change from there, and to the product that we have now.
That's incredible. I always love hearing the origin stories of the shows themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, everything's got its own origin story. And I love that the Oracle, played by Peppermint,
Yes.
who from RuPaul's Drag Race, and then she is the first openly trans woman on Broadway, right?
The first openly trans woman to originate a principal role on Broadway.
Yes.
It's a mouthful, but yep. Yeah.
Yeah, and she is phenomenal. Have the two of you kind of, I mean, the show is getting so much attention now, and both of you are getting so much attention. Have you guys sort of ever taken each other aside and been like, holy crap, what are our lives now?
Well, what I love is it's both of our Broadway debuts.
Yeah.
So it's fun to kind of be in that together. And we both believe in, the message of the show right now and the importance of the representation that we're giving. So it's fun. Yeah.
And is this kind of what you had expected? The 10-year-old girl, you're like, I'm going to be on Broadway and I'm going to be doing podcast interviews and I'm going to be singing on the morning show.
No. It's definitely glorious and wonderful, but it's funny that, it's hard work, and I've never been so exhausted in my life, I'll tell you that much. But it's also amazing and exhilarating, and sometimes you're like, oh, I'm just doing my show, and other times it kind of strikes you, oh, I'm on Broadway right now, and it doesn't go past me how important like the show is, but also like the step in life that here I am and it actually happened. It's funny to like have the different people throughout my past reaching out to me. Now, I just had like a high school friend come into town with her husband, and she came to the show. And we were like, she was like, I always knew. And it was just like really sweet and cool. And I'm like, wow, and we'd taken a trip when we were like 16 years old to the city together. And here we were, she was watching me on a Broadway stage. And we saw our very first Broadway show together.
Oh, really?
So
what was your first show?
Rent.
Nice.
Yeah.
That was I think that was my first show too.
Nice.
Came up in high school.
Yeah, I saw Rent and I saw Aida that trip.
Yep. Yeah, that was the same time. Yeah. I saw Les Mis. It was Rent and Les Mis, I think I saw that trip. You talked earlier about some of the feedback or the people coming up and commenting to you outside the stage door afterwards. Generally, what kind of feedback are you getting overall, specifically for you, and then generically for the show?
I definitely get a lot of, just the other night, a girl, came up to me, and she was a bigger girl and curly hair, and she's like, I can't tell you what it means for me to see someone who looks like me on stage, and that you're being called beautiful, and and she just had tears in her eyes. She's like, it just means a lot. It means a lot. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of people that I've met that beyond size or whatever have clearly been told they're probably not enough in society for whatever reason it is. And the amount of them that says how much it means to them to hear me sing the song Beautiful right off the top of the bat, which is just me talking about how beautiful I am, means a lot. And that's something that, on days where if I've had a bad day or a rough day or whatever, you don't feel great about yourself, which happens to all of us. That's what I remember, and why I'm like, nope, we can't do that on stage, because that is not Pamela. That is not her. She does not have that insecurity, because the whole world has told her whole life how beautiful she is. So it is just fact. You're like, well, yep, I know, that's all I am. I'm gorgeous. And, and she's dealing with a day of having to meet suitors, which she hates. And so it's kind of her way of like.
Male suitors.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
And of her being like, well, like, I am beautiful, and just like returning to what she knows to be true. You know how some people say, like, if you're freaking out, stop and be like, what day of the week is it? Where are you? You're in a room. You're okay. So her version of coping is, I am beautiful. My life is perfect. Okay. It's just like, it's just hilarious. But that's really her, like, talking herself down from like, oh God, these men are coming again. I hate it, you know.
And how much of Pamela is you versus like what you've created? How much of Bonnie is inside Pamela?
Oh, there's so much. There's a lot of the judgmental voices that tore Bonnie down before. There's a lot of early Bonnie Pamela and Pamela. And I mean, a lot of the rhythms of things and, you know, how I speak a lot of things is very much me. Yeah. So.
You speak in iambic pentameter.
All the time.
Yeah.
No.
And the band is all female.
Yes.
So that's unique to that. And then I don't want to give away spoilers. The king or the queen, something happens to her. She becomes something. I don't want to give away the thing. So speaking of,
it's very female empowerment.
Yes.
Yes.
Hugely
The
female.
message. It's very, yeah. Very
it's
female strong.
body positivity, as you said, female empowerment, like promoting queer individuals on stage. And you are also very outspoken about trans rights on your social accounts as well. Do you feel, is that based on kind of the show you're in and the position you're in now, or would you be, is Bonnie, like, are you an activist outside of Head Over Heels, outside of Broadway?
I definitely am outside of there. I was always that kid that I remember, saying stuff to my mom and like tear-filled eyes of just, and I think theater immediately, like in small town, I met more diverse people than in my small town in Ohio or Illinois that I could, then I when you meet more people and you realize there's a bigger world outside of your own experience, it is like your duty to be a voice for others that don't have a voice, like to be an ally. And I learned that at a young age. And if anybody would say something about someone, I would think, why would you say that? And so, especially moving to New York and everywhere, there's everybody and that you could think of, like religion, color, sex, gender, sexuality, all these different identities in this world that we ride the subway together every day.
Yeah.
You stand on a platform next to all these people. And so why are your rights more important than theirs? And I, now having a platform, I think I should use it. Like the people that don't, it kind of baffles me. Like if you have hundreds of thousands of followers and you're a star of a Broadway show and you don't have anything to say about all these shootings and all these things that the president's saying and White House doctoring videos and, trans rights being, possibly taken away, and you should say something. And if you don't say anything, like, what are you doing? And I don't understand. And there are people that don't. And I don't have that many followers, but I'll do what I can and I'll use the voice I can. And I will try to spread a message of love and light and acceptance, and to say that if you're feeling scared, I don't know what I can do, but I'll do all I can to fight for you. And, you look at history and you look at when we talk about the Holocaust, and I remember being in high school and thinking, how could people let that happen? Like, even if how could you let that happen? Or you look back at civil rights and you're like, why were people letting this happen? And I feel like we're closer to that, now. And I think, well, I'm not just going to sit back and be complacent because it doesn't affect me. I'm going to use my voice in any way that I can. And if I'm called upon, then I'll do whatever I can, because I think that's my right, not my right, what I need to do as a human being. That's what we all should do, is stick up for each other, because the world needs all the array of people that we have. It's shitty if you just don't. Like, you need to be a decent human being, and that's the only way we can come towards change. And when that, New York Times article came out about Trump trying to, define gender as your genitalia at birth and all of these steps towards trans erasure. I was texting with Peppermint, who is a dear friend and colleague and star and a human being who's in fear for her rights.
Yeah.
And it's not okay. And what hatred causes people to be scared of Peppermint, who's the sweetest, nicest, kindest, most open, loving human. And you're really going to fight for her to what? It just blows my mind. And so, yeah.
It seems like it's all based in fear.
In fear.
In unknown. And I think like you and I had very similar paths around the middle school, high school age of growing up being in these small towns, but because we were involved with theater, the theater kids are always such this eclectic bunch of differences.
Yeah.
And so I felt the exact same way. I was also the computer nerd, so I had a double whammy. Before computer nerds were cool,
Yay.
computer nerd and theater nerd,
Yeah.
so I got picked on a lot. And I was super skinny.
Yeah.
And you give me a big pouty face.
Well, I probably got bullied.
Yeah, I did. I did.
Yeah.
And so it's never made sense to me why anybody wants to purposely make somebody else feel like that.
Mm-mm.
And I just don't get it. I think it's fear. And the people that I know, especially from back home, home being North Carolina, who I've actually, same with me, I've actually lost some of my older friends and parents of friends.
Yeah.
Because they're just so like, well, this is right because I'm white. And like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
No.
It doesn't make a damn bit of sense. But anyway, here we are. Who do you think you would actually be if you hadn't been part of Head Over Heels? Who would Bonnie be?
Who would Bonnie be? An actress looking for a job. I probably would have done the Kinky Boots tour a lot longer.
I meant more emotionally or
Emotionally.
or yeah,
Wow.
inner image. So I imagine Pamela has allowed you to like accept your own beauty, as you said. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, my life would be a lot sadder. I think I feel like I've learned so much in this process of the show and being the only person to have been with it from the beginning and riding that roller coaster. I've learned so much, and I've met such amazing people that are so integral and important in my life that I just can't imagine. Like the woman who played my mom in Oregon is one of my dearest friends, and she's kind of like my theater mom. So she's really my mentor in a lot of ways, and God, I can't imagine life without Miriam. She has kept me off the ledge in so many ways. Yeah, it would be a lot sadder. Yeah.
Wow. What do you think you're the most proud of so far in your career? Your career is actually, your Broadway career is just starting. You will have many more decades. But what are you proud of so far?
I mean, I'm really proud of this. I'm really proud of this show, and what we're doing, and the album that we got to make. I mean, that's a lot of bucket list stuff that I've gotten to do with this show, and the lives that I feel like we're really changing. I'm very proud of that.
And if you could pick any role in a show to just in general, you could say, I want that role, give it to me now. What would you pick?
I want that role, give it to me now. Oh gosh, I feel like existing things. So I always say, I mean, they're bringing here, I'm sure they're using their West End girl, but I've always wanted to do female Bobby and Company.
Very good.
Yeah.
And then just a quick plug for you as we're wrapping up here. You will, when are you going to do Escape at Dannemora? And what is that?
Okay, so it's a new miniseries that's coming out on Showtime that Ben Stiller directed.
I've heard of him.
It's, he's an up-and-comer.
Yeah.
They have an amazing cast. It's led by Benicio del Toro and Paul Dano. They play a few years, I think it was 2015, there were 2 prison escapees up in the Finger Lakes, up at Dannemora. So that's what this is about. And Patricia Arquette plays the corrections officer who helps them escape. And David Morse, Bonnie Hunt, one of my personal heroes. We didn't have any scenes, but the fact that we're, in an episode at the same time. I'm pretty jazzed about.
So your filming's all done already?
Yeah. I filmed it last year. So I did 2 episodes. There's 8 total. I play a waitress named Bitsy. And
Bitsy.
Yeah. It was great. It was crazy. You know, it was really cool. I got to go and stay at Lake George overnight and go to, you know, on a set with Ben Stiller all day. That was pretty awesome.
Fun.
So it comes out November 18th. It premieres
November
on
18th
Showtime.
this year, 2018?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then we have 3 standard questions
Yes.
that I ask everybody
Okay.
to wrap up. Very generically, what motivates you?
What motivates me? I think the desire to share light and love in this world.
What advice would you give to your young... Wait,
She gave me a face.
do you want to answer that again?
No.
Oh,
What is it?
that's nice. Your publicist is
Sorry.
with us here. Yeah. Let's see. So the second question then. What advice would you give to your younger self and or younger people listening now starting out down a similar path?
I think for people, I'd say hold on to who you are. This is a tough biz and a tough world. Who's kidding who? And what makes you different is what makes you special. And the world deserves your voice. So don't cheat the world and just stay grounded. And that's different for everybody. It could be your family, your friends, your faith, your who knows, your motivation. But be kind and be someone that people want to work with, and just again hold on to what makes you you, and don't forget it.
Last question. If you could only see one show for the rest of your life, but you can see it as many times as you want, what would you see?
What? Oh my God.
Oh my God.
If I could see one show, but as many times as I want, that is so hard. Oh, how dare you? I mean, I feel like I never saw it, but I wanted to see it live. Was like the original cast of Ragtime. Oh my God, that's what I would love, like, original cast of Ragtime. That like album is everything. Oh my gosh. You know what I've also been listening to recently, and I lived for it, was Disaster that happened a couple years ago. If I wanted one like art's sake, that, but if I could have 2, the other would be Disaster, because I saw it 3 times. It made me so happy. And the album is still so good. And it makes me laugh. And it's just, that's what I would do.
Thank you for being here. We
Thank
can
you.
find you on Twitter at Belting Bonnie, on Instagram at Belting Bonds.
Yeah, it's a little more casual.
More cash on
Yeah.
the Instas. And anything else? YouTube or
Yeah,
anywhere
I'm
else
I'm all
Yeah?
over
Yeah.
the YouTube. Also on Search Party on TBS.
Yep.
I play Catherine, Chantal's sister, and I just shot for season 3 too, which is coming out. They're filming now.
Mm-hmm.
So look for that on TBS. And
Wonderful.
That's life. And
Wonderful.
then Birdland, November 26th.
That's right. And then you can find more of me and the Theater Podcast at theater_podcast, both on Instagram and Twitter, or facebook.com/official theater podcast. You can also listen and subscribe via thetheaterpodcast.com. Please give an honest review everywhere you get your podcasts. Of course, we are produced here by Jillian Hockman. And a big thank you, as always, to Jukebox the Ghost for this music you hear underneath us right now. Bonnie Milligan, thank you so much for talking today.
Come see Head Over Heels at the
Yes,
Hudson.
it's
It's
so
a
good.
good time. I promise you'll leave feeling much lighter than when you came in.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Take a deep breath, make the world a little colorful.